That is, I've been playing a lot of Magic the Gathering Arena because it released on mobile devices earlier this week or late last week. I can't actually remember when it was now, something along those lines. Anyway, I'm going to have a review up by the time this pops as well because I've already drafted one. I think I'm going to give it as well around an 8 to an 8.5. I'm undecided. So this and It Takes Two is going to get roughly the same score. So obviously MTG Arena came out, I think it was like late 2018. Or that was at least when the beta was for PC. So it's been out for some time on PC. I remember playing it for a fair bit when it originally released and trying it out, and I'm enjoying it for what it was. I kind of jumped off because I found it kind of annoying that I'd previously spent a lot of money in Magic the Gathering Online, and I was like kind of annoyed. I was like, damn, I can't just like transfer over shit or whatever, and like all this sort of shit. So anyway, long story short, and I in my review, I didn't even bother trying to explain Magic because I'm like, I just want to talk about the game itself and how it plays because trying to explain Magic is a completely separate topic. But Magic is obviously like the OG.
It's a card game.
It's like an OG card. It's the OG card game. It's been around since 92, 93, something like that. I think it's like, it's a long-kicking, long-running card game. And the fact that it's still around does mean that as far as mechanics of a card game go, it's a very finely oiled machine. Like people enjoy it. It's still around because people enjoy it. Its mechanics, if you like the game, you like the game. Now, the one thing I'll say, if you want to compare this to be like, oh, Dylan, I've played Hearthstone. Like, what's the difference between this game and that game? The number one difference that stands out to me playing it especially on mobile, and this is something I point out in my review, be it iPad or be it on my actual phone, because I've played it on both, is that Hearthstone doesn't have blockers, right? Because you just choose what you want to attack. You attack the
Hearthstone is very kind of streamlined for mobile
because it was built as a digital game, so the mechanics were built for these things in mind. And I think it becomes obvious when Magic the Gathering is a game in which you will look, long story short, you play lands, you get mana, you cast creatures, you cast spells, etc., etc., etc. Name of the game is to get your opponent's life from 20 to 0. You can do that with spells, or you can do that with creatures you cast, and you attack your opponent. However, in this game, compared to Hearthstone, when you choose to attack with creatures, your opponent can then choose to block with their creatures. And I've had a couple games now where someone has like fucking a billion 1/1 zombie 1/1 wolf creatures or 2/2 zombie tokens or some shit, and then like you're trying to block 10 creatures with 10 creatures you own, and doing that becomes sort of very cumbersome. And there's no way around it because, like, as someone who played a lot of physical Magic for many years of my life, when you even in real life, when you're playing those moments where someone's like attacking you they're like, I just attack with everything, and they turn all of their creatures sideways on the table, and then you sit there for like fucking 5 minutes because you're like, okay, I got to figure this shit out. But the thing about doing it in real life means you could stand up, lean across the table, and you kind of begin placing your creatures on top of their cards, going, this block's here, this block's here, this block's here, and that's sort of the way you and your opponent work out what's actually happening. Whereas doing it in this game, all it does is sort of like you have all these zigzagging lines going across the screen saying this thing's blocking this thing, this thing's blocking this thing. And the more creatures you have doing that, it becomes very much like, what the fuck's going on? And as someone who knows how to play the game, I'm like, this is kind of annoying, but I understand what I'm doing. Whereas I do think compared to Hearthstone, this would be like a big red flag for people who maybe are trying this out on mobile now, who are big Hearthstone players and not used to having to block. And they're like, what the fuck? Yes. This is just nonsensical. And that is because the game was designed as a physical card game first, not a digital card game. I think if Magic was designed as a digital card game today, they would be more in line with Hearthstone because they would skip this because it kind of just stands out as a digital card game thing where you get fucked. Other than that, it's the Magic you know and love, and I think a lot more people will try it out now that's on iPad and iOS because that is where like Hearthstone's pretty popular on those formats and whatever else. And I've been enjoying playing this most on my iPad because I would enjoy playing this on my iPad more than my PC because I think there's just something special about like it's the perfect screen size. There's just something more enjoyable about flicking the cards, like rotating the cards in your hand, like having that like tactile element because it is a card game more so than like clicking on things with your mouse. Like it's just not quite. I know there's something more enjoyable about just touching the cards.
No, it is. Yeah, it is always on Hearthstone. I've played it both on an iPad and on a mobile phone. And the mobile phone, not only do you have, it's just not nice to use. you often fuck up and click the wrong card and stuff like that because there's a very small area of space for you to actually press.
Yeah. And I would say, like, I've played a fair bit on mobile. Like, I even did an entire draft in the bathtub, though, which I tweeted about, I was like, this is the fucking world I'm living in now. Like, I'm having a great time. I did an entire fucking Magic the Gathering draft in a bath. I was in the bath for like 90 minutes. It was great. It was good shit. Also, I'll add on to that is I had one match left in my draft when I got out of the bath, and I booted up the PC version to go, hey, can I just boot up the PC version and just continue what I'm doing? Yes, you can. It's all very interconnected. Whatever you want to do, iPad, PC, mobile, go for gold. Do what you need to do. Playing on mobile, it's nearly as good as iPad, except for the one obvious thing is the screen's not as big. They do a pretty good job where obviously you can click and hold a card, bring up a bigger version to read, and you'll do that probably a lot more than if you was playing on iPad, which I don't think is a proper negative, because like that's not a design fault. That's just you have to deal with it because you're playing it on your phone. But other than that, it's fairly easy to play on both devices. And I mean, with everything that they've added in the game since the last time I played it, like you have a battle pass equivalent, which has like a bunch of free unlocks per season. And basically the seasons are the current card set, like so it's the next 2-3 months, whatever it is. And then you can buy a premium battle pass. So if you want to do all the dailies to try and level up that, I can see people who maybe play this a lot on PC already being like, well, I can just like get into bed and quickly do some dailies, like try and wipe out some easy dailies, like cast 45 white spells, or you just hop into a bot match with a pure white deck to knock those things out, or stuff like that. I could definitely see people playing it across both formats or whatever else. I'm really, really enjoying it. I definitely can see myself keep playing it on PC because on my iPad more so than I would have my PC, simply because I just enjoy it. Enjoy playing it a lot more there. I think of a slight negative of having it's hard for me to judge is I still don't think the tutorial is quite there. And like, again, that's hard to judge as someone who knows how to play the game, but I just thought the tutorial might not be enough for new players. The one annoying thing about knowing how to play the game is that they make you do the tutorial no matter what. I'm like, fuck off. I know how to play Magic. Don't treat me like some goddamn noob over here. But yeah, I have been enjoying this. Kieran, would you I
think so. It's one of those things where digital card games are always really hard to get into. Like every now and then when I foray back into Hearthstone, but at this point I'm only playing if I ever jump back into Hearthstone, I only ever want to play the auto battler because it's much easier to get back into rather than the actual kind of deck building main kind of game versions of these games. Just because kind of keeping up with cards and keeping up with
the meta
decks can be, and keeping up with meta can be superly hard sometimes. Like it's just one of those things, and especially when kind of with these games needing for you to buy cards or buy booster packs or kind of get into that, I think it's a lot harder to do. And you either have to be ready to be like really committed into playing it, or kind of I don't see it as something that could be that casual, if that makes sense.
My one counter to that is all I'm doing is drafting for the most part. And drafting, I would say, is hard to get into because you have to learn. Like drafting, in case people don't know what drafting is, it's a format in which, so you're on a table of 8 players, including yourself, and everyone opens up a pack. You take one card out from it, and then if you're playing in real life, you pass the pack to your left, and that's what you do until all the cards are out, and then you open a second pack and a third pack and so on and so forth. And by the end of it, you're supposed to you create a deck of a minimum of 40 cards, and that's what you play with for the entirety of the rounds. And learning how to draft and like what makes a good card in limited format like drafting is a skill that you can acquire. I think it just takes like practicing drafting. However, drafting is kind of easier to get into and keep playing the game with because you don't have to get the good cards. Like being a good drafter simply means learning what makes a good pick in general. You know what I mean? Like compared to if you want to play standard or like a constructed format where you are coming up against people who have the great decks and you've got to keep up with the meta. Drafting, you keep going around. Now to draft in the game, you do have to spend some level of real world money. If you're good at the game, you can win drafts and you will win in-game currency that can kind of nearly pay for your next one. But otherwise, of course, you're spending however many dollars. I can't remember. It's like probably like fucking $5 or some shit. I don't know to draft. The thing is You keep all the cards you draft like you would in the real world. You get prizes per win like you would in the real world. If you're really good at drafting, you pay that however many dollars it is. You keep all your cards, and I think the maximum prize is like somewhere of upwards of 7 packs of boosters to buy. You know, like it's obviously the better you are, the better your prize will be, and the more you can rotate it. Yeah.
But I think that's harder for even then. It's harder for a casual person to get into. Like again. Like that was the thing where you used to suggest draft to like people who used to like kind of being when I used to work, like not work, but used to play Magic the Gathering physically. You used to have new people come into draft because it's like, well, draft is the easiest way to get into the game because you get given the cards, but at the same time you spend the first month of doing it getting your fucking ass handed to you if you have no idea.
You know what the problem was? Everyone at my local store, all the newbies, they would open a pack and it would be a shit mythic and they would take it and then they'd complain why they weren't winning. It's because you got to learn that maybe you don't always take the rare card, you take the good card, the pack. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, there are bot games. You can replay the tutorials as much as you want. I think if you want to learn how to play the game, there's enough bot mechanics to practice on. I think there's a free draft where you don't keep any of the cards, so you can practice that way. So that is handy, of course, like a phantom draft, I think, or something like that it's called. And then if you want to step it up, there's a draft mode where you don't have a timer and you're not playing in real time against other people drafting, and you sort of draft against bots. So that means you can take more time picking a card. And then the premier drafting mode is where you have a minute to take your pick and you're drafting in real time. And that's the one where the more hardcore players go. So I think there's enough options to like for your level of Magic like skills. Yeah. However, I would agree compared to like something like Hearthstone or some of the other digital card games, this one does have a harder barrier of entry, but I don't think that's any different than the real world. Like that's not just a Magic the Gathering arena thing. That's just a general Magic. That's going very back to
not just Magic as a game, and then you also go to games where honestly, if you look at games like League of Legends or Dota or any of the MOBAs, which equally are just as hard to get into, I think at the same time it's like they're MOBAs. That's just kind of part and parcel.
It's but honestly, like even those things, like I didn't play League for however long, and then I could jump in today and I could pick up, like I could figure out what's going on pretty quick. Whereas I hadn't played Magic for like a year and a half. I jump into this. I'm like, what are the mechanics in this current set? Sure, like I don't even read them. I just start drafting, and then I was picking cards and going blah 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 blah. Yeah, that seems good. You know what I mean? Like it's like once you learn how to ride the bike, you never forget. You know what I mean? Like it's once you learn the core mechanics of something like Magic, something like League or Dota, whatever, these more harder games and whatever, you learn the core mechanics, you can come back and pick up what's going on. You're fine. You just jump back on and figure it out. Like there was a mechanic currently where you could cast spells for 2 and then like cast them later. I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, I was like, yeah, sure, seems good. Do this, whatever. My first draft, I won I think I went 4 wins and then lost out. So I was like, 4-3 in total, which isn't anything to cry home about. But I was like, pretty good for my first draft because I haven't played Magic in like nearly 2 years. 2 years, so take what I can get, kind of thing. Yeah, I'll tell you. I told Ash you should have a go at this to see what he thought, but I take it you didn't get a chance to try it out.
No, I didn't. Yeah,
are we scaring you off?
I quickly jumped to do it during this podcast. But yeah,
are we scaring you off or?
Yeah, I just it doesn't fit what I use mobile gaming for. So
as something to do while you're multitasking.
Yeah, some mindless